hey gang, I forgot to mention the offer that Safetywing is providing to all the JJRR listeners out there. So I'm just popping it here in front of the episode. What you want to do is go to the show notes, and the link will be in the show notes of this episode, and you'll be able to get 5% off their global health insurance for freelancers or for companies, so for a small business. So 5% off if you use my link. Also, through the link, you can also buy the Nomad insurance, travel insurance, but I don't think they're giving the discount on that one. So there's just the discount on the first two. Please check out the link if you're interested. You'll understand what it all is once you listen to the episode. Okay. And also, I think I'll be sending out a new email just focused on this offer because I think it's just so interesting. So people that are signed up on the email list will also see that in a little more detail on it. So there you go. Forgot about it, but here it is at the beginning. All right, let's get on with the episode. Hey, revolutionaries. I'm excited to bring you this week's episode with Sondre Rasch, where we're talking about developing a global social safety net. Yes, a global social safety net to address the holes, I guess, that are popping up with the way we work and live today. So that means, for freelancers out there that are maybe living not in their foreign country but working, small businesses that are getting started but they're sourcing people around the world where their teams are not co-located. So you have actual employees, but sitting in many different countries. It's hard to figure out how to address the social safety net types of things. For example, health insurance, retirement plans, benefits, those types of things. When you're not in your home country, and normally you would get some of those things from your home country government or big corporations that are located in a certain country, like in the United States, our healthcare is tied to a big corporation, but you have to be a citizen and be co-located in a certain region, all those kinds of things. Anyways, Sondre is with his co-founders and with a company named Safetywing is creating this new type of global social safety net. It's really fascinating, and it raises some interesting questions of how to view the world and where these services should reside. It's pretty interesting. It's a great conversation, and it has some revolutionary aspects to it, which is, perfect, of course, for the reinvention revolution here. But before we get to the episode, I wanted to focus on, I guess, revolution for the moment, since when I'm recording this, I guess today's July 5th. So we just had the July 4th Independence Day celebration here in the United States. So it was a holiday, national holiday, of course, and it represents when let me get this right, because I looked it up on the internet. Give me 1 second here, because I was like, I wanted to remind myself what July 4th, 1776 was. Okay, so it's one of the biggest holidays, of course, in the United States, and it's actually when the Second Continental Congress unanimously, easy for me to say, I guess, unanimously, there we go, adopted the Declaration of Independence, announcing the colony's separation from Great Britain. So it was our Independence Day when this document was signed. So pretty cool. So I'm thinking about revolution and how that if for people listening out there, there's probably some aspect to revolution in your thought process, right? Because you're looking to reinvent yourself and maybe look at the world a little bit differently. So I know we're all on the same wavelength here in terms of there's some revolutionary thoughts going on in our minds. And it made me remember that when I was doing research to interview Sondre, this episode that's coming up here, it spawned a new turn of a phrase, a new catchphrase in my mind that I wanted to share with everybody. So, there's a phrase out there that's in terms of inventing things, right? Inventing things for the first time, where necessity is the mother of invention. So I think everyone's probably heard this phrase: necessity is the mother of invention. And it makes sense, right? But when it comes to reinvention, I was thinking about what Safetywing is doing and what Sondre is up to and how interesting and revolutionary it is. But what spawns reinvention, I was thinking. And I was reading some of the thoughts and his background on some of the websites that are out there. And, he mentioned that when he left his job, he was frustrated with the slow pace of change. And I was reading through that, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, because that spoke to me That was how I was feeling when I quit my job, my last job that I've ever had in 2006, before I became independent and, jumped into entrepreneurship. And I had the same feeling. I was frustrated with the slow pace of change. I was frustrated with the vision that my company had. I could see how the world was changing quickly, that we needed to embrace these technologies and move faster. And it dawned on me like, oh, wait a second here. If necessity is the mother of invention, I think frustration is the mother of reinvention. Frustration, and maybe more specifically for me, and maybe for other people that are listening out there, frustration with the slow pace of change, where you see the world differently, or you see that you can, create a different life for yourself, but you're frustrated with the slow pace of change or how it might go. Anyways, I just thought it was interesting. It was the first time I ever thought of it. I don't think I've ever heard it from anyone else, that frustration is the mother of reinvention, where it's like, you know what? We got to tear this thing up and just redesign it, do it all over again. It's time for a clean sheet of paper, Anyways, I wanted to share that with everybody because, I gave credit to Sondre during the episode because he was the source of inspiration for me discovering this for myself. Anyways, just wanted to share that with everyone out there. Maybe that speaks to you, or maybe that will give you some insight into why you're feeling the way you're feeling, or what you feel your next move might be or needs to be. So anyways, there you go. There you have it. Okay, enough of me talking. Let's get on with the episode. Here's Sondre. This episode of Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution is brought to you by MGS Graphics, a graphics production support firm delivering services to ad agencies, graphic designers, brand managers, retailers, and product manufacturers worldwide. MGS Graphics is not only reinventing, they are revolutionizing graphics production support. So how do they do it? Well, they free up your team to focus on big ideas while MGS Graphics handles the execution. Their skilled experts are ready to jump in when your project load spikes so you can avoid the headaches and extra overhead cost of hiring new staff. Plus, you won't lose out on work opportunities because of delivery and production timelines. Did you know their skilled staff of professionals use the best and most widely used graphics software on the market? And when it comes to project management, MGS Graphics provides the highest level of customer service by assigning you a dedicated project manager. And they use the industry-leading project management software to ensure all communication, deadlines, and deliverables are met. This allows teams and clients to collaborate with each other in real time, no matter where you are around the world. Need more than just production? MGS Graphics also has a fully staffed creative team. Ask about their design services and agency partnerships. So, if you're looking for a partner to accelerate and support your business's growth, go to mgsgraphicspro.com/JJRR for 15% off your first project. 15%? That is revolutionary. Go to mgsgraphicspro.com/JJRR. That's mgsgraphicspro.com/JJRR.
Welcome to Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit JimJim'sReinventionRevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim Jim.
Hey everybody, hey, it's Jim Jim, and welcome to episode 85 of Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and I'm talking today with Sondre Rasch, and we're talking about developing and creating a global safety network for freelancers and small business. So Sondre, welcome to the Reinvention Revolution.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so glad we connected, and I'm super psyched to have you on because I've known about Safetywing, I think maybe starting 2 or 3 years ago. I first heard of you guys. So I was at the Nomads Summit in Chiang Mai. I think it was 2018, I think.
Yeah.
I believe you guys were there. And then,
that's right.
Yeah. And then I realized that in the fall of 2019 in Cancun, that
Yes.
you did this presentation. You remember that? Okay, so I was in the audience there, so I was there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fun.
So I was just like, hey, man, these guys popped up again. Like I think I heard about you the first time the year before, and then I was glad to see your presentation. And what's funny is I just rewatched it earlier today because I was thinking like I didn't remember it was you in particular. I was thinking like I know Safetywing did a presentation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I watched it again because you made a really great point of talking about kind of the historical perspective of what you're trying to do and how human beings related and moved around and were originally more nomadic in nature before we built out cities and had this other infrastructure around. Which I want you to comment a little bit how you see things playing out and what your vision is here for Safetywing. But before we get there, I wanted to. Sorry, this is a little opening here, but I wanted to read a snippet from your bio because it kind of spawned a new turn of a phrase in my head just today, which I want to give you credit for. Okay, so this is for the audience too, so they'll understand where you're coming from. So Sondre Rasch co-founded Safetywing together with Sarah Sandnes and Hans Jelby. Sorry, these are Norwegian names. Born in Bergen, Norway, he studied economics and computer science before starting work as a policy advisor for the government of Norway, advising on social policies. After getting frustrated with the slow pace of government change, Sondre first founded Reside, which we can discuss if you're interested. But I like that phrase, slow pace of government change, slow pace of change, and your frustration with it. And I just thought of this today that, in terms of, startup world and creating things, necessity is usually the mother of invention. That everybody knows that phrase. It kind of rings true still to this day. But I never thought of frustration as being the mother of reinvention. So,
yeah, that's interesting.
and I want to give you credit because this spawned the thought in my head today that, certainly when things get disruptive or there's chaos or a dramatic impact on your life, you're forced to change. And so change comes around, reinvention quote comes around then. But I think the way it really has an impact when you really decide to let's rip this thing up with a new sheet of paper, it's frustration is what causes it. And so I'm curious, back then, how you were feeling, if that rings true with you, and tell me kind of the origins of why you decided to start Safetywing in particular rather than that first company.
Yeah. No, exactly. And, that frustration comes out in the form of, so I was working as a policy advisor in a sort of policy team, and it wasn't a common position. So we had, in a way, a lot of influence, the sort of group of policy advisors. We were suggesting solutions to problems in society by kind of going to research and collecting ideas. And it was during this process that I really found a lot of the evidence for something that I'd seen in a way as a teenager, which, we broadly can call the internet economy, or sort of like emergent effects of the internet economy and remote work and freelancing and things that comes with it. But there are also many other things. And essentially, I saw that in certain ways, society was about changing quickly, and we had to adapt faster in some domains. Otherwise, it's gonna be hard to change later.
Right.
And so I made a lot of proposals, and the frustration comes from the lack of urgency, or the sort of lack of will, or how difficult it is to build up a will. And I don't blame government. Government is a big organization,
right?
Even a small country like Norway, government is a big organization, and that's part of it. It's just that there's a lot of inertia so even when a problem is shared, it has to be abundantly clear to everyone, and there has to be a sufficient alliance for a solution to go through. And that can take a lot of time. So that frustration is the kind of seeing a problem kind of clear as day, and finding that even though individuals will find it kind of true and compelling, it's just isn't made for the kind of quick adoption that I think is needed to sort of adopt to the kind of internet age we're heading into.
Right. It's that slow pace of change. That's exactly what I was feeling like when I quit my job, back in 2007 now. So it's been a while, but that was exactly right. I knew the company wasn't moving fast enough. I felt like the vision wasn't there, and it's like I could see it, and it was just my frustration. And it's like, you know what? I need to do something else. I need to move on. And I think that's really encapsulates to me what reinvention is, where it's sort of like it's born out of this frustration. It's more than just a dramatic change to your life. It's like, you know what? I really need to do something different. I need to change the world in some way. And so that sounds like where you find yourself, obviously, with Safetywing. So tell me about, you're frustrated working in this government sort of niche or area, and frustrated with the people around, not with the people around you, but with the pace of change and how you see the world. What got into your mind in terms of thinking that you could start your own business? Were you in San Francisco by this time? By the way, you grew up in Norway. You're working in the Norwegian government there, right?
Yeah, that's in Oslo.
In Oslo, okay.
Yeah. So what made me think I could start a startup? Well,
exactly. Yeah.
I had this little stint into, as a teenager. At some point, some friends I met on the internet set up a website, and even offered some sort of web hosting thing. And I learned some basics there, some like HTML, PHP. So I had this little stint from the teenage years. So I always knew, I kind of knew about that world from back then. And it was always like, a very close second. Like it was startup or policy. That was kind of like, okay, this is the two ways you can change the world.
Okay.
And so it was, always at the back of my mind. And I've always been like very interested in technology and building things. And, I find that kind of a great adventure, and always been a good attraction. So anyway, it was at the back of my mind that I could do it, but I hadn't done it. Like dabbling into a website isn't, building a startup.
Right.
Certainly. And so it was very scary. I mean, I grew frustrated. I decided, change had to come, and I came up with this, formulated the idea of the previous company. And then I had then also discovered the sort of logic of digital nomadism, which was this idea that I can move abroad and thereby have to earn less money and still kind of live comfortably, and maybe
right.
Have savings and have like a personal runway. I picked up some of these ideas,
right,
which made it more possible to start a startup, because I knew I was kind of heading into a bit of like an income risk situation.
Certainly, yeah.
So I saved up a little bit, and I was planning to move to Berlin, it was possible to live very cheaply in Berlin back then.
What year is this about, roughly?
2014.
2014, okay.
Yeah. And then, and I also started the company part-time, and I worked on it like evenings and weekends.
Right.
Sort of as a side project. So anyway, and then quit my job, which was scary, but I had this sort of planned out in a sense. And then it kind of worked out though, which was very fortunate. And then we got applied to Y Combinator, which is an accelerator in Silicon Valley, San Francisco.
Right.
And then it was by participating in that program that I moved here.
I see. So that's where you really got your sort of, you widened out your vision, let's say, of being an entrepreneur and being a tech startup, a techie guy. What was that? And this was your first company, or this was Safetywing by then?
No, this is the first company.
Okay.
And then it was in this company that I sort of discovered the problem that is Safetywing. So this was a freelancer platform.
I see, okay.
And we wanted to provide benefits for the freelancers, found that nobody offered that the way it needed to be for us, because it was spread all over the world and it was flexible. And I tried for a year to get someone else to start what is now Safetwing, actually, a year and a half almost. I went to founder friends and said, okay, someone has to make this. But nobody wanted to. So in the end, we sort of thought, okay, this is important. And because I had done this thing with the government, I had some idea about what a social safety net on the internet could look like.
I see.
And so in the end, decided to leave that company and found Safetwing.
I see. Yeah, that's really interesting, because I was kind of curious as to, this need is out there. I think now since this pandemic has hit, right? I think the world has woken up. At least more people have woken up in terms of working from home, freelancing, maybe starting a side hustle, etc. The pluses and minuses to all of this, and one of the minuses has always been, well, what do I do about benefits? What do I do about healthcare? Especially if I'm traveling and I'm moving around the world now. It seems like it's been there as another niche for traditional companies to just widen out their brand into. Why do you think it's taken someone new like yourself, like Safetywing, to really spearhead this movement in a way versus traditional companies?
Right. There are multiple reasons that we have sort of learned as we have gone along. I mean, the biggest one is probably the least flattering one for the insurance industry, which is that it is a remarkably, I guess you could say, stable or stagnant industry.
Right.
In many of the people, the companies we interact with, it is pre-internet processes, mostly even pre-computer age processes in many cases,
right.
Which is, that's incredible. Like how untouched many pieces of the insurance industry has been from this sort of technological revolution that has now kind of reached everywhere else. But it's happening now with the insurance industry, that they are like actually making things digital, and it is very easy to make digital. So it's like it's a bit of a mystery why it was one of the holdouts. Okay, so that's one key thing, because it hasn't changed for a long time. Okay, so number two is going from national to international. So the insurance industry most companies are national. There are international insurance companies, but they're like a mosaic of national insurance companies.
I see.
So even though you have like some massive insurance giant, they have like, Munich Re USA and like Munich Re France is like, they're not thinking globally about these markets. They're thinking that these things are separate. So remote work and freelancing, like now it's big. I think it's on everyone's radar. But go back a few years. While it's it's a fast growth rate, it's still a very small share of like a national insurance market.
Right.
So that it was up until recently too small to notice.
Right. I gotcha. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, in terms of the global versus, national markets being disconnected or looked at separately from these big corporations, it reminds me a little bit about in the earlier days of the internet. So like I used to work for Borders Books and Music, which is now out of business. I don't know if you would remember that, but
bookstore, right?
Yeah, it was a great bookstore. I loved working there, and I just took it as a part-time job. I had quit my main gig for a minute, and I was just trying to figure out what to do next. And this was late 90s, and I was shocked that they had Borders.com at this point, and the Borders, retail stores, but they viewed them as completely separate businesses.
Right.
Like the people at Borders.com did not talk to the people that were in the retail stores and vice versa. You could not walk into a Borders store and order anything from their internet website in the store. And the search systems were completely separate. They had some kind of proprietary search system of their regular library, and then Borders.com was a completely different search system. And so what they would tell you that they could find in their store system, you didn't know whether they sold it online. They couldn't answer those questions. It was like completely mind-blowing to me as a customer that this existed in this way. And that it sounds like the insurance companies are kind of like in this state of being for the moment, where they've just... This has never been a requirement from a customer point of view, and so they developed in this certain way. But now, the world has changed obviously quicker than they've been able to pivot. So I guess it leaves this opening, which is a cool thing for Safetywing, and that's why you've been able to get this traction with it. So can you break Safetywing down a little bit more in terms of the product offerings that you have and the real I guess the real applications, the real needs that are out there. So one thing that comes to mind when I was starting to travel, which I didn't know because I want to educate people about this, I didn't even think about it that I should think about this. I didn't know to think enough about travel insurance. So I'm assuming I'm a U.S. citizen. I have very good health insurance here. I assumed I would be covered traveling in a foreign country. I didn't know to think differently about it. But I guess in most of the insurance policies, they have little clauses in there that say, hey, if you get injured or whatever, and you're not in the United States, we're not covering you. And this is the issue that one of the issues you're trying to address. So can maybe explain that for people.
Right. Yes. So, well, let me start to zoom out just to see sort of how it fits together. So zoomed out, the global social safety net is, there's two use cases there. It's like people abroad. That's the sort of digital nomad use case. It's people who work remotely and live abroad. So they're not necessarily travelers, right? The typical one is like they're living abroad for a long time. And then the other use case is companies, remote teams. So that's like a company that hires remotely and therefore has employees in many countries. So that's sort of the two use cases where it doesn't work, whatever is locally. And so when it comes to the use case of like me abroad, what did I used to do before our product was made is quite, typical, which is that I had a travel insurance, but I also later learned that it didn't cover much medical. I thought I was covered.
Right.
But anyway, it only lasted 45 days. It was possible to buy an extension for I think another 15 days to 60 days, but I lived abroad. So I flew home to restart my travel insurance every 2 months. And so that was what I did before. While with Safetwing, then I can have a subscription, which is sort of $4 a month perpetually. And it also is like a much more complete medical coverage compared to most travel insurances, which what they often do is just fly you home in the case of a medical thing. But Nomad insurance is meant to sort of, you can go and get treatment and stay there.
Right.
Yeah. So that's sort of roughly the case. And then there were some other things like the ability to buy it abroad, the ability to have a subscription and, flexibly turn that off and on again. These were some things that travelers don't really care about, but that is relevant for nomads. And that was kind of who we were making it for, people who live abroad. So, and as for the company use case, the problem there is, Safetwing is a remote company. We're located in the US, but we have, 60 people across 40 different countries. So, of course, we can't buy U.S. health insurance for these people because, Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't offer coverage in any other place.
Right.
Actually, it's only a few states. But so with Safetwing, our company can then add our employees or contractors in any country in the world on one dashboard, and they get like a complete health insurance. So that's the sort of two use cases we have. And as for kind of like looking into the future, we want to then add, retirement coming at the end of this year, remote doctor, but also income protection, and then eventually sew that all together so that we get a membership. And here's, I think, another reason why also it's been so complicated to start this is that we're on the borderline between insurance and government. Like in many countries, the products we're making is applied by the government. It is the national welfare systems. And that is eventually what we, hope to offer a good replacement for those who don't have access to good government services or private.
Right. Well, okay. So I'm glad you brought this up because this, I guess, sort of speaks to my comment earlier about how, as the world has evolved and cities have evolved and the infrastructure evolved, we started creating these safety nets based on this different type of infrastructure versus, hundreds or 1,000 years ago when people were more nomadic by nature, where they stayed in tribes and they created these social safety nets within their system. That's kind of why the tribes were there, right? This is from your presentation in 2019, describing like, hey, certainly we want friends and we want family relationships, but part of that tribal structure was because if you're sick or if you need food and you can't care for yourself, that safety net was there.
Yeah.
Once we started moving into systems, et cetera, those safety nets got pulled out into different organizations like governments or like corporations, like, in the U.S., for example, somehow our healthcare system got tied to large corporations. So if you worked for a large company, you got a great health insurance plan. If you don't, you don't. And that's just the way it is. More recently, they've tried with, Obamacare or Trump care, whatever you want to call it, a governmental system they're trying to move towards, but people, here in the U.S. think it's, it needs to stay private. But it just begs the question of where should this exist, and where should it reside, and what the structure should be. So how do you envision Safetywing, or who gets to play or who should play those roles in the world now, the way the world looks now?
Yeah. So I don't think the national governments can provide it for the use cases mentioned. So, the Norwegian government, like a Norwegian company that has employees in 40 different countries, it is completely impractical that the Norwegian government, are to provide those services for those individuals. And the same for like a person living abroad, like a Norwegian then living in Mexico. It is certainly impractical for the Norwegian government, but it's also somewhat impractical for the Mexican government,
right,
to provide those services. So, and with the internet, those two use cases will be increasingly common because you can hire internationally, you can move easily because your job is remote or can be done remotely. Mm-hmm. And so I think that can't be the sort of right level to resolve it on, and that we have to make these sort of communities or startups. I think internet startups can do this, but it has to be made in a sort of globalized digital way, where you can bring it with you wherever, and it's available in equal measure around the world. I do think that because of that practicality, that's the level it has to be done at. It has to be done globally.
Oh man, it's so it's interesting to kind of figure out or envision how this might play out. What do you think about the taxing authority issue with that in terms of citizens? So like, hey, if I'm a citizen of Norway and geographically you're working and living somewhere else, is Norway still taxing you? And if they are, shouldn't they be responsible for that safety net if they're the taxing entity? Or locally, would, let's say the example of a Norwegian living in Mexico, would Mexico want to start taxing the local nomad there, and should they be responsible? Or is it this third party of Safetywing that says, hey guys, don't worry about that, we'll take care of this. It's easier, just logistically for a third party to do it. But then what happens to the citizenry part of the taxing? I don't know. Have you thought this through?
Yeah. I mean, the where I think it will end up after the transition is roughly that. So geographical countries will still exist, but some things will not be practical to do at that level. And then geographical countries will also go somewhat from a dynamic of monopoly to a dynamic of competition for citizens and internet companies. This will play out in the form of like remote work visa, nomad visa, special kind of ways to attract nomads to move to their shores, internet companies to relocate there. And this new dynamic, which we've already entered, will kind of gradually become apparent. And then they'll enter into a more competitive dynamic, which just does change the ability to tax somewhat. The ideal way, I hope that this lands, here I think we can look at other industries that have gone through transitions and like look at some that went poorly and some that went well. A poor example is, I guess, the music industry,
right,
where it was sort of it started with Napster, which was like crypto today, I suppose, and it was like a pirate.
Right.
It was a bit outside the law, and it was a bit outside everything, kind of. They weren't trying to build a new infrastructure. They just thought that information should be free or something like that.
Right.
And of course that collided, and then there was through the 2000s, the music industry just sued everyone who started a music startup. But in the end, Spotify emerged, and they took responsibility for also paying the artists. And I know, for example, still that people would wish the artists earned more on Spotify, but at least they paid something compared to Napster.
Right.
And that became sort of then it was over. But this was a painful decade for the music industry, for the labels and the distributors and everyone involved. So compare that to how this can play out with countries. the hopeful thing you can hope will happen is that geographical countries will mostly focus on the opportunity this brings, because there is a lot of opportunity here to attract, like, you have a city or a country and you want like these great companies or, knowledge workers to move to your place. And, now you can do that because they're more mobile. Right. And so this, like, the positive side of the coin, maybe that will shift the dynamic. And then you will have some that will kind of resist that. Okay, so that's one part of the dynamic that will play out. And in terms of taxes, the ideal way it will end is that you have some combination where you have these private services offering like something like the social safety net or other things that are best provided as a membership instead of as on the citizenship level, the national level, that there will be some peaceful kind of cooperation there. What I would suggest is what you today have in both the Netherlands, actually in Germany and Chile and Singapore, which is that they say, provided you are above a certain income or something, if you live within countries, you have to either have, a private or non-profit social safety net, or you have to pay for the government one. Right. And that, I think, is the solution that we'll end up with.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? They can't compel you because you're not a citizen of their country, but you can't you can't be a burden on their society either.
Exactly.
Right.
So they can require you to have something.
Right. That makes sense. I got it. Yeah, it's super interesting. And, part of it is, you did mention cryptocurrency, where I wasn't thinking about bringing it up, but since you mentioned it, I have a question about it. Now that we have crypto, and that's another thing that's sort of, changing, that's a world that's very dynamic right now in terms of this cross-border or diminishment of national currencies or fiat currencies potentially. Is that something that you see as driving your business, or that people are concerned about, or that you're like, how are you incorporating this digital finance part into your system, since this really is a global safety net and that's part of it?
Yeah. So the answer is, like, when we first started out, we had a sort of strategy to choose. You can sort of think of it as like evolution versus revolution. Like, we could build the entire thing, on the blockchain, smart contracts, like that. It's possible. It would have been difficult. The reason we went away from, like, chose not that route is that the adoption of our product would sort of be contingent on the adoption of crypto for that.
I see.
But that said, though, we are paying close attention to it. We do intend to implement, hopefully by end of this year or beginning of last year, that we can offer pay in and pay out in crypto, so that it is possible for someone who earns income in crypto. And we are noticing that, especially people who lives in certain kind of less well-managed countries, that it is, more and more people who have remote jobs, get paid in Bitcoin, and for them, they're natural customers of ours. So we do want to offer that possibility. As for like the rest of the infrastructure, the other part of insurance is the sort of financial side, the underwriting, as it's called, the reinsurers, insurance. Like right now we're operating within the existing structure. So we have traditional licenses, traditional reinsurance, we interface with the sort of, less like the old world in a sense, and dragging them with us. But that is possible to replace, but I'm not sure if we should be the one to do it. I would more say that if anyone's listening, that they want to do a kind of crypto decentralized finance product that I think has a lot of potential, I would say it's crypto reinsurance. It's very suited, actually, for a crypto product, because it's very sort of transparent, easy to understand risk that is sort of executable in the kind of sense that I think a smart contract based product could be made for this purpose. But nobody's done anything like it yet. So I would say if someone starts it, we would be happy to talk to them, but I don't think we will do it ourselves.
I gotcha. Well, it makes sense. I think it's a good strategy, like you said, where you're not trying to be super disruptive or thinking about 20 years in the future. You're just trying to offer something that's contemporary, that where the need is really immediate here and it's close and people are doing these things. And up until this point, I think we've been talking about people that are a citizen of one country living in another country more long term, or that remote teams of where it's hard to manage because not all of your employees are in one country. I want to ask you about maybe the flip side of that, or the case where everybody is within a certain country. Like if I'm local to the U.S. and I just want to be a digital nomad now within the U.S., and I find it difficult because somehow I need to have a physical address, my insurance company expects that or something, or if I don't live so many days in my state, like the state of Ohio, state of California or something, and I'm out of state all the time, is that an issue right now for traditional insurance? Or is that something that Safetywing does cover today or can cover or not?
For the Nomad insurance product, not yet. We do intend to, in the future, add home country coverage so that it's like truly global, so that even an American, it will work in the USA as you kind of nomad around within the country. But as of right now, that product is only possible when you're not in your home country.
I see.
I should say though that the definition of home country is a bit vague. It's where you reside, primary residence, where you receive regular mail is sort of the definition of that. And many nomads, can that it isn't always obvious where that is for certain people.
Right.
But that is the definition we use. In the future, as mentioned, we hope to, we plan to expand that so Nomad insurance works everywhere. We do have another product, Remote Health, which is this, health insurance product that does work in the US and would work for this use case, because that does work in the home country, including
the health insurance. So travel insurance as opposed to health insurance. So the health insurance does. So if I wanted to just switch my insurance to Safetywing health insurance, I can do that now today.
Yes.
And there's no limit. There's no 90 days or anything like that. It's ongoing, right? Yeah.
And the benefit would be that you can indeed move around, and you can even move abroad and be on the same plan.
Okay. So that, exactly. This is, in my mind, it should be simple. Like I just want to join one plan, and no matter where I am in the world or what I'm doing, I'm covered, and I don't have to turn subscriptions on and off and manage that. It's another layer to manage. Of course, having a solution in the first place is great to have a solution, but then you want to go to the next level of being able to manage it. Oh, that's great. And then obviously the coming things of, retirement planning or income disruption, or, when that gets interrupted. So in thinking about like your vision of as you grow and as you as this idea becomes more popular, are you feeling the rub yet from some of the larger corporations or governments that are thinking like, hey, wait a second, they're not on your, in terms of they're not, their mindsets aren't there yet. They might feel threatened, et cetera. Are you feeling any pushback at all?
No, so far it's all friendly and open arms from both. But I'm sure at some point that changes. But as of until this point, we are met with only interest and welcomed by both insurance companies and also governments we've talked to, in the sense that they find us interesting because we're in, like I explained earlier, why hasn't this product happened yet? Well, part of it is defining the product nationally, and remote work is before COVID was big globally, but small share of each national market. Doesn't seem as a competitor. So it's like, I don't think it seems as big enough to feel threatening. So it just feels cool and interesting and an opportunity. Right. And for countries, it's everyone we talk to sees this so far as an opportunity, right? So, we have been promoting this idea of a nomad visa and a remote work visa. Something like 15 countries have implemented that in the last year. And so that is that has just been tremendously hopeful to see how open people are to these kinds of ideas. So as of right now, I think we're only met with open arms, and we are also friendly in our attitude. Like we are kind of thinking like, oh, we want to help. We have this policy project where we intend to sort of like email out some policy ideas for, governments who want to, be competitive in the new world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of, that's our attitude towards that. Like we want to have a friendly relationship with them.
Right. Well, I think it makes sense, and like you said, there's so much opportunity and the innovation, just because of the way governments are and the larger insurance companies and larger corporations that are tied together because of it. The innovation has to come from small business, has to come from startups. It can't come internally. That's one of the things I noticed over my career in the engineering world, of working with some of those big corporations. Like I used to work for General Motors, and I consulted with Parker and a bunch of places. And they would always bring me in because they want to do new things. But then when you actually suggest and try to execute on it, while you're internal to the company, they feel threatened. They don't understand it. They can't move as fast. It's like just a disconnect. It's a mismatch. And so it has to come from outside. And I would kind of counsel them to this fact. It's like, hey, if you're not really going to do this, what you need to do is invest in a startup and let the startup do it. And you can mitigate your risk this way, right? You can still hold the purse strings. You can still control the whole operation. But you don't have to fight that internal fight. And so I think, I think it's just timing is on your side here in terms of
I agree,
bringing this to the world, bringing these solutions to the world in a non-threatening way, and the world needs it. The world's definitely going this way. It's not going back the other way, and the governments probably couldn't feel comfortable of like, hey, let's watch what they're doing, let's see what the right solutions are, and we can try things without threatening our own internal systems, and it's pretty interesting. So if you looked forward from here, maybe 5, 8, 10 years down the road, what do you really see happening in terms of, people living in a real different digital way? Like one of the things that came to mind when I first started kind of expanding my mindset in terms of the digital side of the world. I've been on the hardware engineering side of the world for a while. In 2016, I started trying to look at things online, look at software, because I knew this explosion of the internet connectedness and social media was going to just unleash a bunch of insanity and craziness into the world. That provides opportunity though, and provides real solutions. And what was I going to say here? The understanding of, what's
going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry about that. So what it spawned in my, thank you for prompting me, was I imagined that, hey, we can organize ourselves not by geography anymore, not by nation state necessarily anymore, right? We can start organizing ourselves in the digital world and find connections and culture that are common in these digital ways, right? And so like becoming a citizen of a digital country or a digital platform or whatever you want to call it, or being a citizen of Amazon, and Amazon might offer healthcare and might offer all these safety net things or whatever, and you can be part of that. How do you see things playing out like that?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have got a taste for it now, which is that anything that can be done remote on the internet will be,
right,
and the transition will be faster than it was about to, because COVID accelerated the development of a lot of infrastructure that otherwise would have, people wouldn't have built before they had to.
Right.
So over the next 5-10 years, this trend, just broadly continues, which is that larger and larger share of people will have income. They will have a workplace which is remote. So like post-COVID, will probably go up from sort of 3 to 15%. It sort of peaked at 45% of whole population. So if working age population is more, it's like 30%, who are remote and who therefore can move. And that then again elicits like it's like a resettling of where people live. So it's like when the car came, right? And then there is this like secondary effects. It's like as everyone moves out to the suburbs, and then this creation of the suburbs, which has again its own effects on society. And so that's one of the more interesting things that's about to happen, which is it's happening right now, but it's going to play out, which is that, well, what's the equivalent, when people get a car and they can move out to the suburbs, where do people move when they can move anywhere? And like, how does that, and, broadly we see some big things, that they broadly move out of the most expensive cities and the sort of least attractive cities.
Right.
And people move according to their preference. So certain beach towns and mountain towns do better. Some people go back to the rural who always wanted to live there. They only live because of their job in the city.
Right.
And then you see this very interesting thing that's happening. It's still early days, which is that the development of sort of specialized communities. So you have the Umaya village, which we support in Belize, which is like they took this resort and they made it into a remote work village. And they got this kind of off the ground in a few weeks. And they're like immediately were like booked for months, which just showed, okay, so this is a model that's going to work.
Right.
And I know a couple of projects which are sort of like castles in Europe, kind of rebuilding that into sort of digital nomad remote work villages or hamlets or places like that. And then the next thing you might see is this idea that online communities kind of go offline. And this is especially true like in the transition period, which is that, if suddenly, several of your friends are more mobile, you might move to the same place.
Right.
We have one person in Safetwing who moved out of San Francisco and bought a lake house in South Carolina, and now he's urging his friends to buy other houses along the same lake house.
Right.
So anyway, so it's a bit hard to see how this lands exactly, but it's broadly this. It's this popping up of these communities for new cities and communities. And great opportunities for repopulation of rural and kind of beach towns and mountain towns, and also this sort of online communities going offline and kind of moving, settling together, and that will have very interesting effects on its own. And I'm curious to see how that will play out. But that would be my prediction on the sort of like housing, which is its own thing.
Right.
Yeah. But it has great opportunities as well, because, if you're in real estate or you want to do co-living, like there's just so many types of properties which had little value before, which suddenly, can have great value. That's the story of the castles in Europe. They're just falling apart. Nobody wants a castle as a summer house. If it's not near a tourist center and it can't be a bed and breakfast, it's just worth nothing. Right. Well, now you can make that into a remote work location.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I always notice that sometimes when you travel through some of these real high-end neighborhoods, just no matter where you are in the country, in the U.S., and I'm sure it's somewhat similar around the world, where you see these McMansions that have been built in the last 30 years, and they're super expensive, and it's a super high mortgage, and when the world gets disrupted and the financial crises happen, you see that these are really in disrepair. It's like, who needs this space? We got, people were encouraged to buy them here as like a 3-person family, but you need a 4,000 square foot house. I mean, it's kind of insane in a way, but now those can be repurposed because people can find each other in these new ways. People can move around in these different ways. I think it's really an exciting opportunity. I think if you look at it the right way of, a little bit unknowns are a little bit scary all the time, but I think mainly it's an exciting opportunity for everyone around the world to reposition themselves and to take advantage of the opportunities that this is offering to everybody. Yeah.
And that is like, in a way, the big choice for everyone, both individually and like as companies and countries is, are you going to be focused on the opportunities and taking advantage of that and sort of like finding, adapting and if you do that, you can kind of end up much better off, like
right.
in many ways. Or are you going to sort of like go the other way and sort of like trying to prevent it from happening? But I think that's a really losing game here, because the thing that is causing it to happen happened long ago, which is just the internet.
That's right. Yeah.
This is all downstream of the internet.
This is a great point. I think people are still, even though the internet's really been around for 20 some years in a mature way, people have still yet to wrap their head around what's driving these things. I think they're railing at their own governments. They're yelling at the politicians. It's all this craziness. It's like, it's not any of those particular things. It's the connectedness. It's the technology. It's how the computing power is moving fast, and that's my message of the reinvention revolution. I feel we have to reinvent ourselves on a daily basis now, because the world's being reinvented, and the only path forward is reinvention, really. Otherwise, you're just going to remain frustrated.
Right.
So hey, we got a few minutes left on the podcast. Thanks for sharing all this. This is just an amazing to talk to someone who's really on the leading edge of the thought process of how the world's changing. And in that regard, I always like to ask a couple questions towards the end of the podcast. One's about technology. And for someone like you, who's really in the heart of technology and dealing, with the online world, what gives you, what's a challenge for you in terms of technology? And for those that find themselves very challenged, they're like really reticent. They're the ones that are moving back and not reinventing themselves. What might you suggest for them to kind of embrace technology a little bit more?
Wow, that's a really good question. So I think a challenge for me in terms of technology is that there's a set of new technologies that despite having spent a lot of time trying to understand them, I feel like I don't fully understand it. I even did, and I would say the two there is, I would broadly call it, I understand a lot about it, but when I mean deeply, I would in this include both machine learning and to some degree a lot of crypto. It's like, what makes it work? And because if I don't feel like I know what makes it work, it's hard to predict. It's hard to get into it. And and I've heard rough explanations, and I can say the sort of typical things you might read in an article, and maybe even I can go a bit deeper and try to explain some, for example, some machine learning algorithms and how they might work. But nevertheless, I don't feel like I have this kind of level of comprehension where I feel confident.
Right.
And that, that's like when something you don't understand, becomes so important. That's the
rub.
That's the rub. So that, I think, would be my kind of rub with technology. And I do try to understand everything, especially things that I don't understand. But nevertheless, that's a fact. So that's one. And then how to approach it differently. Well, here I would sort of point to this great insight by Kevin Kelly, which is that, he has this, it's actually on this exact point. He says there are no AI experts. This is in a book from a few years ago. And his point was not that there are no people who call themselves AI experts, but that these fields that are on the frontier are changing so fast that if you kind of try to get up in something in 6 months, you'll be like best in the world.
Right.
So if you, so you can, everyone is in your shoes essentially. So which, because we're gradually changing to something more like our mobile apps. It's not that we learn a completely new software, but our software kind of automatically updates in the background. And we sort of choose what we want to stay up to date on. But on those things, there is the upside to the technology changing fast. So the downside is it's hard to keep up with everything. The upside is you can become the best in the world in 6 months.
Right. Well, I think it's a good point that, 2 points there, that we're all in this together. I mean, now everybody is challenged with this, where maybe before it was a certain niche or a certain industry was challenged. Now I think everybody's challenged by technology and the pace of change and the frustration that it brings. But your point about like embracing it or getting to the other side, if you become the expert, and the opportunity that it brings, this is a message I want to get out to people that I kind of just figured out another way to say it, is that, you can be frustrated and you can move away from it and not learn it and not introduce yourself to these new things, but you just remain frustrated, where without any benefits, where that it will still be frustrating because technology is frustrating because it changes so much. But if you try to adopt it and adopt some parts of it, then you get the benefit. So you're going to be frustrated either way, most likely. I'd say be frustrated, but get the benefits as well by embracing it, So I don't think everybody thinks that way. I think they think it's just black or white. It's all frustration or whatever, so. Yeah, great. Well, I got my one final question for you. And that is, through all this, rapid change, especially through the pandemic and starting a new company, can you share a reinvention revelation with everyone? Something that you learned about yourself or about business or about how the world's changing that can, provide some insight for us?
Well, I mean, one thing that has been very important for me in the last year is, in a weird way, it sounds like it's the opposite, but it is new for me. So I'm learning it, which is that, some of these great Enlightenment philosophers, they were very good at, some knowledge, at finding this kind of knowledge that has high reach or universality. So when things are changing quickly, there are always some things which don't change. There's knowledge which with a high reach, like it remains relevant and useful across contexts or across time. And when things are changing fast, those become even more valuable than in a sort of static world, because that becomes a solid foundation that you can then have this sort of like changing layer on top of.
Right.
And you really want to make sure that what you kind of have in that bucket, that like what is the things that I think are always true, are actually things that are always true, right? Because if not, they will be obsolete soon.
Right.
And but I do think that they exist. I mean, I certainly think that knowledge with high reach and high relevance or universality exists, and maybe even perfect relevant, reach and universality. So that has been, part of my own journey in the last year, is just to figure out for me what that is.
Right. Well, I like that a lot. That really speaks to me, because I was a physics major, for example. So, and one of the things that I believe the physics gave me was a way to think about first principles, fundamentals, and really be able to rely on those to kind of sort through the chaos, or when you're trying to do problem solving or whatever with things that are changing or limited amounts of data. You can rely on these principles, like you said, these that have impact, that are widespread and are just global truths of the world, that you can rely on those. And so when you're trained in that way, it takes a little bit of the anxiety away. Not all of it.
Yeah, not all of it. Yeah,
but maybe a little bit of it away. So, well, Sondre, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you. And like I said, I've known about Safetwing for the past few years. I'm really looking forward to what you guys come up with here in the future, because I know it's going to help me personally, as I want to get back out in the world and start traveling, but also inform the world with some new ways to look at things. So if people are interested in finding out more about Safetywing or connecting with you, where would you send them?
So the website, safetywing.com, and we also have, I think one of the more entertaining social media channels we have is the Instagram, Nomad Cities. So I think I would send them there.
Okay. Very good. And I'll have all the information in the show notes, of course. Sondre, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. This has been great.
Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it, and will help others find the same value that you found.